We would like to thank LSR for sponsoring the Let's Be Frank video podcast. LSR produces Southern Cane Pure Cane Sugar, which is only grown, refined, and packaged in Louisiana. Southern Cane is available in your local Associated Grocers and Rouse's supermarkets. We are kicking off episode number 9 on the Let's Be Frank video podcast. I'm your host, Jason Duhe. Alongside of me is Hall of Fame head coach Frank Monica. We got a packed show for you tonight. We have Week 8 recaps in LHSAA along with some Week 9 previews. We're going to recap and preview LSU, Tulane, along with some other local schools. We're going to talk about some Saints football. We also have a special guest, Rummel Athletic Director Jay Roth. And when we get into the Let's Be Frank segment, Coach is going to discuss if sports seasons should be longer and more. So without further ado, Coach, another week in the books for the high school season. At this point in the season, how much do you look at defining your team or sharpening up certain aspects of your whether it's your run game or your pass game, maybe seeing if you need to expand or change any of your playbook or maybe even cut it down, as you mentioned, Rabbit going to his favorite hole as we head into the playoffs?
Well, before I answer that question, Jason, there's a lot going on, in other sports. The Yankees are about ready to get eliminated, by the Dodgers. That's pretty cool. The Dodgers are 3-0, and some of the big names are not having very, very much success. And but the Dodgers are up 3-0, and they play again. They got 2 more games, if necessary, in New York. And something else that happened, I don't know if I was going to get a chance to talk about it. They had a Hail Mary completion the other day, 52 yards. Jalen Daniels actually scrambled around for the longest time and threw the pass. And exactly what you teach them to do, you do a star effect, so to speak. The guys go up and try to tap the ball back, and exactly what happened. But it was the defender that tapped it back, and the guy behind him catches the ball for a touchdown. And I mean, it was unbelievable how they won that ball game. I don't know if anybody saw that, but it's been played 100 times already. But anyway, getting back to your question, Jason, here we are. I mean, I think it's not time to experiment right now because it's time for guys to kind of gear up their football team, get ready for the playoffs. They're 2 weeks away, and a lot of the playoff brackets have actually, you can kind of see that they're starting to formulate, and people are starting to place themselves in a certain, and they're already starting to call in other coaches because sometimes these power rankings don't move very much when you're in district because you're playing one another. So the winner and loser, they kind of cancel one another out in terms of that. So the only thing that is up in the air is whether you're going to win the game or not. And a lot of these districts are so watered down. They're so weak is that you pretty much can predict about where you're going to be even right now with 2 weeks left to go in the season.
Coach, I don't know if you caught it. You were mentioning the tip ball against Chicago. Did you happen to catch the defensive back who tipped the ball taunting the crowd seconds before the play? And that's something I know you would have never let happen on your team, at least without an earful, but it really seems like reality kind of hit him after that play.
Exactly. And I feel for those guys. You had the game won, and I really hate to see that kind of play have success. Because, you've beaten that team and something like that just out of sheer luck. But we always worked on versus that play. In fact, I always personnel that. When I got to a situation like that, when I thought a Hail Mary pass was coming, we would get first of all, our tallest guys on the field in the back, and we also got our fastest guys on the field. In fact, it's called the Cheetah. We call this club the Cheetah Group, meaning the fastest. Cheetah's the fastest land animal in the world. So we called the Cheetah Club, and they would go out there and they practice that every week. We practice that to make sure that, 1, you keep the quarterback in the pocket, so he's got to throw from the pocket. And 2, you put some tall guys there. And 3, make sure you bat the ball down, not up.
All right, Coach, let's go ahead and take a look at some of these Week 8 recaps as we jump into prep talk. In our first matchup, we had Carr defeating Warren Easton 62-16. I'm just having a hard time seeing anybody keep up with Edna Carr, much less defeating them. They've been a very impressive ball club in a Catholic league that's been gridlocked week in and week out.
No question. They're so fast. There's a lot of prospects, a lot of speed. Johnson threw for 311 yards. He had 5 touchdown passes. And, field position with Carr doesn't matter. They can have their own 5 or on your own 20-yard line. I mean, in fact, the deeper they are, the faster they show their speed because they'll use more of the field. But, it's going to be hard for anybody to just dethrone them. Now, someone like this week, they play John Curtis. We'll get into that later. Someone like John Curtis can actually slow them down.
In our next matchup, we had Jesuit reeling off another impressive win as they took on John Curtis 17-10. Coach Manali has done a phenomenal job with his team this season. Last season didn't end the way that they wanted it to, but really came in this season, got a big win against Edie White early on, and really just picked up steam as the season has progressed.
They had 2 big touchdowns in the fourth quarter when they trailed. They trailed at that time. John Curtis, 2 big touchdowns. They showed one on television. The guy makes an aerobatic catch on the sideline with 1 foot in for a touchdown. And just they're starting to throw the ball, and they're really, really big on both sides of the offensive and defensive line. So they might be the hottest team in the state right now.
In our next game, we had St. Charles Catholic defeating a formerly undefeated Belt Chase Ball Club 14-13 in that game. Yet another win where St. Charles has to play down to the wire. They scored a touchdown under the last minute and a half. How much does this, we mentioned the St. Charles team is a playoff team, although they might not have the wins that normally people are used to seeing. How much does playing these tight games benefit them as this season progresses down the stretch into the playoffs?
Well, not only tight games. Talked to Coach Stein earlier, and the fact that they've played great competition. So anyone that they see in the playoffs, they are not going to be in awe of because they've seen the best of the best. So that's going to really help. The way they won this ball game was really, really crucial for their momentum and their psyche. They scored within the last 2 minutes of the game on a short drive after a short punt. And a quarterback for Bell Chase carried the ball 26 times for a quarterback, and it showed a lot of moxie. And St. Charles had to come from behind to win, and on 14-13. And thank God that one of the 2-point plays was off that muddle huddle offense that they used on every PAT and field goal. So big win, and Landry LeBlanc completes a big pass, beautiful pass, and late in that ball game for about a 25-yard gain that made the difference and kind of set up that last touchdown.
In our next game, we had Riverside defeating Central Catholic in a tight one, 18-15. A little bit of a different track after we got to see them, the offensive fireworks against St. Martin's earlier in the season. But Coach Roussel and the squad finding a variety of ways to win and continuing to build that resume as they do head into the playoffs and are looking and vying for one of the top seeds.
Oh, they're going to be a top seed. They'll probably end up with a bye in the playoffs, and with the only 2 games remaining. And they've had a good schedule. They've had a schedule that will prepare for the tough games. You know, they played Terrebonne, they played Vermilion Catholic, they played this game Central Catholic that's on the road. So that even tests you more. And I always like to play tough games on the road like that because I think your team grows up. So I think that Coach Roussel's team will be there when the dust settles.
In our next game, we had Rummel defeating Holy Cross 13-7 in what could be described as a defensive struggle. It really felt like Rummel controlled the majority of that football game as I was fortunate enough to be on the call for that game. Holy Cross forced a turnover, was able to score on a short field, but getting to see this Rummel defense in person really impressed. And it seems like the way the Catholic League is built this season, defense is running supreme, and it's going to be very tough to score points against any of these teams. Well,
I think that Coach might have a little disappointed. He thought he couldn't separate in that ball game, even though they led off the game. They were getting some pretty good push, and then all of a sudden, Holy Cross responded on a short field, as you talked about. Taylor got him back because he'd been missed the last 2 ball games, and he had 28 carries for 142 yards. So that was big. But unfortunately, Rummel's kicker got hurt in that ball game, so they couldn't kick the field goal to get a 2-score lead. And one of the fumbles was down there on a quarterback sneak, so they just couldn't get that separation. But give Holy Cross the credit because they hung in there.
In our next game, we had St. Aug defeating Brother Martin 28-0. Coach, a nice win for St. Aug as Brother Martin continuing to try to find their way in this Catholic League, but yet another impressive win for Coach Valdez's program as they continue to improve upon their final record last season.
They lost 2 tough ball games. They lost one in the last minute to Jesuit, then they lost in overtime to Rummel last week, and they look like they put things together, eliminated mistakes. The quarterback, Coulon, had 3 touchdown passes in the ball game, and the skill is there. So it looks like this is a team that's getting better, really helped themselves out as far as the power ranks concerned, jumped up and might even, with a couple more ball games left, might even find themselves in a position where they'll get a bye.
In our next matchup, we had Vermilion Catholic defeating Opelousas Catholic in a big district matchup, 50-21. Coach, that's a big win for that team as they move on in a big district situation.
Vermilion Catholic, from what we understand, is a very powerful football team. We saw what they did to Riverside, which is real challenger for the state championship. You saw what they did to them earlier in the year at their home site and on Riverside's field. So it's no surprise. I think the score was a surprise to us, but it's no surprise that they actually won the football game.
In our next matchup, we had a big road trip for East Ascension as they took on Turlings Catholic. But Turlings Catholic remains undefeated and wins 28-14. We kind of spoke about this game over the phone. We said this is an East Ascension team that probably would have lost this game by a good bit more in a past season. And even though they're not winning, you are seeing the Spartans show life, fight back, and really kind of turn their page as a program.
I think, Coach Mathern is an excellent coach, and one of the reasons that they selected him because he turned around the program before. So look for them now that they got a shot to make the playoffs, and they'll be a nightmare draw for somebody because they're getting better. They got some skill. Quarterback is getting better, and now he's starting to get that program, and the guys are starting to buy into what he's telling them. So that's so important that you change that culture. It takes you a while to change it until the kids start to see some success.
In our next matchup, we had Alexandria defeating Ruston 40-36. Alexandria is still unbeaten on the year with some nice wins on their resume, including defending state champion Ruston. They also defeated Destrehan earlier in the season. This is a good ball club, and I think if you are in Division One, you have to be on high alert if you see this team upcoming on your schedule or in the playoffs.
Well, they're scary. I mean, they're really putting up points. They're well coached, and they're right there in central Louisiana. That for years and years, Alexandria was a team that was just average. But now, all of a sudden, the last few years, they've really taken off. And remember, they're also involved in that D1 select side. So, I mean, that's going to be – there's not a good draw in that whole D1 select side.
Especially now with the combination, Coach. It really has been – it was brutal before. It's even more so now. In our last recap, we had Acadiana defeating Southside 43-10. Acadiana continues to do what we've known it's going to do. It's going to run the same veer offense. It's going to continue to put up points. And it's a well-oiled machine and has been for quite some time.
Well, Southside is very talented. And Coach Curtis came from there. Previously, he was at Manny, and he took this job. And I think he saw the talent there and the opportunity to win and really, really build a dynasty there. But, when Acadiana, they just know what to do. Those kids come through that system. They know how to block the veer. They play hard on defense, not fancy on defense, but they play extremely hard. And they're going to pound you. They're going to pound you. So when you play them, you better get ready. And because, they're going to bloody your nose a little bit. And you better be able to stop the veer offense. And they're fast-paced. They know what they're doing with it. They're as good as anybody that's ever run the veer. They do it well.
We're going to go ahead and move forward and take a look at some Week 9 previews for this upcoming weekend. In our first matchup, we have St. Paul's taking on Mandeville. Will St. Paul's be able to hand Mandeville their first loss is the big question. We know that St. Paul's plays a physical brand of football. We know the type of football team that Mandeville has been all season, played high-quality opponents, have won every ball game that they've been faced with. But will this be the weekend that we see Mandeville push to the brink?
Well, I think they got bad news today from Mandeville. The running back Shepard has been declared out for the year because of a leg injury. We're sorry. We'll pray for that kid. Hopefully he has a speedy recovery because he still has a future in college. And but going back to this ball game, one lost St. Paul team, undefeated Mandeville team right across town. So this is a rivalry anyway. And they're playing for the district championship. And the winner of this will actually probably win with the district. And probably, down the line, they'll separate when they go to the playoffs. But both of these teams could end up creating a lot and going deep in the playoffs because both of them are very talented.
In our next game, we have Hahnville taking on Destrehan in what I would describe as one of the most explosive rivalries, if not the premier rivalry in the River Parishes. We know that this is a program headed in a new direction under Coach Bourne in Hahnville, and we know Coach Scott at Destrehan has done a phenomenal job. And this is the game that everybody in that parish has circled from day one, even in the summer or even after December, they're already circling this game on the calendar in the future year. What do you expect to see in this game?
Coach Bourne was offense coordinator at Destrehan for the last few years and worked with Coach Scott. And so they'll be very familiar with one another and what they plan to do. Hornville didn't anticipate them being as good this early. So this is for them to be 7-1 going to this ball game is a credit to them and Coach Bourne and put it in a new system. But Destrehan got their quarterback back, and they still got some really, really talented athletes. But again, as you said, this is for the district title on the line. It could be a three-way tie. Destrehan should win because Terrebone's in there also, but for the district title. But again, as we talked about earlier, the district championship is not as important as it used to be, but the power ranking is the most important thing. But for this one, it's bragging rights in the parish.
In our next game, we have Carr taking on John Curtis. We kind of discussed this earlier when we talked about John Curtis taking on this Carr ball club. We know the amount of talent that Carr has. However, there's definitely a feeling of kind of exercising demons as they've struggled against these Veer-type ball clubs. And we know that Curtis, despite having a few losses on the schedule, they're going to be a very physical football team and going to run the ball effectively. Will this be a team that pushes Carr maybe a little bit further than even Jesuit was able to earlier in the years?
Well, the one thing that Carr is always concerned about, and they should be, is limiting your at-bats. In other words, if a team controls the football and they keep their offense off the field, that's the best defense in the world. And I'm sure that's what Coach Curtis plans to do. I know Coach is looking on the other side. Carr said, well, we've got to stop first down. We've got to make Curtis throw the football and get him behind the chains. And you can see Curtis actually gambling a little bit in the game like this. They got nothing to lose. What I mean by gambling, when you get inside the chains, go for it on fourth down a little bit and try to get that extra first down because Carr is the type of team, they don't care where they get the football. They're going to air it out. Or they'll have an explosive run. So the field position doesn't mean anything to them. But as you said earlier, John Curtis is a team that can go 3 yards, 3 yards, 3 yards, and all of a sudden they can aggravate and move the ball down the field, consume the clock, and get the ball in the fourth quarter. Get the game in the fourth quarter where you're close, where you have a chance to win it.
And you mentioned if you're not playing sound defense the entire game assignment, one play they can break it. So that's always the danger in playing those Veer-type offenses, mainly when you look at, in particular, Curtis and Acadiana. Next matchup, we have Rummel taking on Jesuit in another incredible rivalry in the state of Louisiana. Rummel only has one loss on the year. Both of these teams have played incredible defense throughout the season and have really relied on a run game, a running attack. And you talked about kind of earlier about melting that clock and keeping ball control. I think this could be a very low possession game, and it's really going to come down to who can control the ball more effectively and make the most of their opportunities.
The Jesuits gotten increasingly better. They're throwing the ball better. They had 2 big touchdown passes last week. They're massive up front with that offensive line. You know, those kids, they don't make many mistakes. And the team that turns over the ball the most will lose this football game. If you can hold on to the football and just turn it over your defense and be solid in the kicking game, that team will win the game. So, and they're playing this on grass, the old-fashioned way, you know. So it's going to be a very, very physical ball game. Coach Manale, Coach Monica know one another very well. They worked together at one time. So it's not going to be any secret what they're going to do. They're just going to have to out-execute the other.
In our next game, we have St. Aug taking on Holy Cross. Both teams have very impressive defenses. I think this is going to be a defensive struggle. Holy Cross did a good job of trying to contain that rushing attack for Rummel, but just had a lot of athletes on the field being able to carry that football a week ago. And we know St. Aug is going to have a number of athletes on the field at all times. So I think this is going to be an intriguing matchup, but ultimately it's going to be a defensive ball game.
If St. Aug gets their swagger back like they had last week, it's going to be hard for Holy Cross because I think St. Aug is armed and dangerous. So what I mean by that, they have a lot of talent. And soon this talent quits making mistakes, they're going to be a team that they have to contend with. And they still got 2 ball games left, and they're headed for the playoffs and a deep run there. So they could be a team that's there at the end.
Yeah, Coach, I was going to ask you because we know this St. Aug team is under new direction. They have all that talent. They do have 4 losses on the year, but you can see this team making a run in Division One Select if they find themselves on the right side of the bracket. As you mentioned before, I think Division One Select, there's so much that has to come with. Do you have the best path or the best opportunity in your path wherever you may fall in that playoff bracket to reach the state title? And if St. Aug falls in that right slot, they could turn some heads and make some noise.
Well, what they've done in there, when they've added the St. Thomas More and the Turlins and the Alexanders of the world, I mean, it's just loaded. It's just loaded. It's got 7 out of 8 of the Catholic League schools in it right now. And so they could possibly have 8. And I think that's what the Holy Cross is looking at right now in order to get in that top 24.
In our next game, we have another rivalry. Coach, we might as well dub this one Rivalry Week. Belle Chase taking on Archbishop Shaw in a game that has been a big one for quite some time. Coach Tierney has done a great job scheduling difficult opponents under Shaw, so you know they'll be prepared. Belle Chase is going to have to face their first adversity in the season, coming fresh off the heels of a loss to St. Charles Catholic. And this is going to be a big district matchup as well as a rivalry game.
Well, right across town. I mean, they can walk home after the ball game. They're neighbors, and I'm sure this game has been a rivalry for a long, long time. I don't know how many years they've played against one another, but you need to have these kind of games. You need to have these backyard brawls every now and then. I think they're really good for the fans, really good for the student body. They get involved with it. These kind of games create parades. They create just a lot of excitement around the school. And so it's nothing like a good rivalry game, I think, to get everybody kind of stirred up a little bit. And as far as the implications and the playoffs, that both teams will be there. Both teams will be there. Shaw right now is in the top 2 as far as their power ranking is concerned. Belle Chase is in the top 5. So, I mean, but it looks like on paper, Shaw's got a lot of firepower. And I don't know if Belle Chase has the same firepower, but I know one thing, they will play hard. Coach Myers will have them definitely ready.
It's going to be very tough to contain. You know, Coach Myers, a defensive guy, coached at Belle Chase previously as a defensive coordinator, going to have to draw up a heck of a scheme against the athletes that Shaw has on offense. As you mentioned, a ton of athletes and weapons on the perimeter in the backfield. That might be an exciting ballgame to keep an eye on. We also have in our next matchup, Newman taking on Country Day. Newman, unbeaten on the season. We'll see if they get a test here as they take on the Cajuns.
Well, I put this matchup in there because these schools have similar missions. Both of them academic schools, and both of them have kind of the same talent level. But right now, Country Day is not on the talent level as Newman. But it's a fun game, and it needs to be played every year. They've been playing one another for a long, long time. So it's a fun game. The Country Day has a kind of a new stadium, new turf, and the whole deal, which is something that they fought hard. Coach Cheddar does a great job. He does a lot. He does a lot. A lot of coaches have a bunch of assistants. Coaches does not have the liberty to have a bunch of assistants, and it's going to be just a game that I think be fun for everybody. What they call it, a martini game or whatever to do. Coach Stewart's he's got a powerful football team over there, and he's headed to the playoffs, and he's the number 1 in Division II right now. So I'm sure he's not going to let down in this game.
We also have Brother Martin, who's going to be taking on Warren Easton in yet another Catholic League matchup. What do you expect to see in this one?
Well, I think both of them need a win. So you can see, and when I think they both preached to their team, Brother Martin earlier, they defeated Romo earlier. Looked like that they were pretty good, but in the Catholic League, boy, you just can't start feeling for yourself. Sorry for yourself, because the next week somebody else will take it out on you. You got to just keep your head up and keep playing hard football. And Warren Easton's got enough talent to really create some havoc. But I think that they're pretty good. They just haven't shown that. They're still making mistakes. They still haven't shown that consistency. But I think that they're a team that could actually upset you if you don't pay attention to it, and because they can score.
You kind of hit the nail on the head. Both of these teams appear to be caged animals kind of in the corner, and you have nothing else to do but fight your way out and claw your way out. So this is going to be an interesting matchup as we move on into the weekend. And another one, we have De La Salle taking on Kennedy. We talked earlier in the season about De La Salle and the brutal schedule that they played. started off to a rough go, have reeled off 4 wins in a row against a Kennedy team that's going to come in hungry. Should be an interesting matchup.
Well, Kennedy is very, very talented. I think Kennedy is one of these teams that you really have to watch. They had the 3 forfeits, and that was their losses, the 3 forfeits that they had. They played some good competition. They don't have many players, but the ones that got on the field can play. So I'm sure that Coach Graham is going to look at this and say, hey, this is the district championship right here, because afterwards they both have, I think, easy games. So this is the district championship here. But even though both of them are headed for the playoffs in their respective division.
In our next game, we have Dutchtown, who's going to be taking on East Ascension. Dutchtown with only 1 loss on the year. We kind of mentioned East Ascension earlier. Dutchtown, a program that made a deep run a season ago, felt like they were really on the cusp of a state title, and it felt like the rug was kind of tugged out from underneath them. They've responded really well this season, and this is another opportunity to see what they can do against an East Ascension team that will not mirror what they were a year ago.
You know, it's sort of funny. EA looked at themselves as the blue-collar team, and here's Dutchtown. They think like, first of all, the elite team. And so the EA's, I don't know if they're in the same level as Dutchtown yet, but they're going to use that, I'm sure, in the locker room, say, hey, these guys are a bunch of small brats. That's what the coach is saying. Well, you guys are blue-collar guys, and he said, we're tougher than they are. So the whole deal. But Dutchtown on paper looks like a better football team. But it's a fun rivalry. It's right across the interstate from one another. So it's one of those games that you'd like to watch.
Coach, you seem pretty practiced in using that line. Have you used that one very often?
What's that?
You said the blue collar versus city slicker mentality. Have you used that one very often?
I've used that in a lot of them that are on the bathroom wall right now. No question.
In our next game, we have Episcopal taking on Dunham in a 7-1 ball club in Episcopal, an undefeated team in Dunham. Dunham has a lot of athleticism around the football field, a really solid quarterback, and Episcopal just consistently winning ball games. This is going to be a fun one to watch, and it usually is one that you kind of have to take a look at on your calendar and see when it is to go take a watch.
Well, Dunham has the better quarterback. He's a really good. He can see the whole field. He's a big guy he can take over the ball game. He's about 6'4". But Coach Broussard, he has a version of his offense a little hard to deal with, a little bit wing T in it. He's got some other things in it, so he's going to keep you off balance. He's done a great job there for a long, long time, and his kids will compete. So look for this to be a thriller.
In our next game, we have Zachary taking on Central. Both of these teams come into this game with 1 loss. Central, a very physical team. Zachary, probably known across the country because the amount of winning that they've been able to do and what they've been able to accomplish at the highest level in Louisiana high school football. This should be a fun one to watch. It is a very interesting game. And Central is not an easy team to take on, and especially when they're hungry.
Well, it's really funny because this week 9, we've had a lot of crosstown rivals, and this is another one. I mean, they border one another. Some of the kids share because they share some of the kids. Sometimes the kids at Zachary, sometimes at Central. They're both very talented, both well coached football teams. So this could be a war, down there. And again, even though both teams are headed for the playoffs, it's one of those things for bragging rights that you say whether the playoffs or not, they could be 0-8. It wouldn't really matter. They're still going to play just as hard.
Talking about rivalries, Coach, look at the last game we're talking about is Turlings Catholic taking on St. Thomas More. Did all the schedule makers kind of get together and make this schedule this week? It seems like there's been a lot of these big crosstown matchups, but we know Turlings Catholic has firepower. We know that they can put up points offensively. St. Thomas More always has and always will play one of the tougher schedules in the state. They have 3 losses on the year, but we've talked about this. When you're playing these tough teams, it's really, it's hard to measure those losses.
Well, there's another situation where Turlings feels like that they're the stepchild. They're the orphan of that group in Lafayette. And here's STM is sort of they're the elitist of Lafayette. And so they use that against one another, but both of them are well coached. Both of them are good football teams. Both of them are good offenses, fast-paced offenses. And they'll snap the ball within every 14 seconds of every play. And so this ball game, they both will get 80 snaps apiece in this ball game. It's going to be like watching a tennis match. It should be a lot of fun in this ball game. And again, both of them Now, even though they have the 4A enrollment, both these schools are playing D1 for the playoffs.
Thanks, Coach. I'm going to go ahead and turn the page and take a look at some local college football programs. And we're going to start off with LSU, who hit the road against Texas A&M and took a 38-23 loss. The score felt like a wider margin than that. LSU came out very strong early in this game, busted off a few big plays. Offense really sputtered. And what resulted in were field goal attempt after field goal attempt, including one early on where you had the ball in great position to score a touchdown. You had to settle for 3. And from there went on to miss 3 straight field goals, although one of those was a botched snap. Although that's not even the story. I think when you look at the way the defense played, not physical, very unphysical football, catching, not attacking. And we saw Texas A&M make a change at quarterback, and it was a read option. The quarterback came in and ran the read option over and over and over, and there was no answer on LSU side. And
I have 5 points I want to bring up in that ball game, Jason. They would get away from poor old LSU because, one, they don't have the personnel. So people need to remember that. They just don't have the personnel that LSU's had on either side of the ball. They just don't have the personnel. There's not a defensive lineman, not a linebacker, not a cornerback, defensive back that's going to make all SEC. They just don't have the personnel. It's not their fault. They're well coached. I love what Coach Kelly does. I think they're well coached, but they just don't have the personnel. Number 2, they don't have a Division I running back. The little kid that they got right now is good, but he belongs probably to another division. They don't have a Division I running back. And for LSU not to have a Division I running back, Tulane's got 2 of them over there. Why? I don't know. 3, they have no kicking game. The kicking game, the field goal kicker is normally pretty good. They have no return game in a punt return. Of course, the kickoffs, you can't judge that because they kick that in the end zone. But they have no kicking game. They don't put pressure on any punter because they can't get anybody to punt. So that's another story. 4, their offense. I mean, their offense. They have low percentage throws. They throw no bubbles. They throw no screen passes. They throw no slants. They throw no hitches. They throw deep routes, a bunch of crossing routes. That's low percentage throws. Now, they're great when they work, but that's low percentage throws. So you're putting a lot on your line and a lot of the quarterback. They hit those deeper routes. They're not helping him. You like to have a quarterback complete 6% of his passes, but those passes are all 20 yards or better in most cases. And last but not least, these 5 points. If you're going to run the zone read, run the read part of it. All they do is run zone. Everybody knows the back's going to carry the ball. They have to run Nussmeier just a little bit, run him a little bit to show that I will do it. Go ahead and slide after those 5 points. So basically, the most important thing is just remember, they just don't have the talent that they had in years past. And so it's the way that ball game unfolded, it looked like they changed jerseys at halftime. And it's a shame because we all were pulling for them to see, because that loss probably knocked them out with a possible playoff opportunity.
2 quick points to tack on. You mentioned the kicking game, and you can't dismiss the punting game either. Their punting has been very subpar. That affects it. But also, Coach, if you live by the field goal, you die by the field goal. A lot of opportunities squandered because you're trying to, as you mentioned, chuck deep passes instead of maybe running the ball or maybe trying to toss something in the flat to get a few yards to maybe go for it on 4th down. They played for 3 time and time again, and they weren't able to convert. So ultimately, they have a bye week to try to get things together to take on Alabama. Not an unbeatable Alabama team like we maybe have seen in the past, but still, it is Alabama. So you get that game at home, and we'll see how things play out in a pair of weeks. In our next game, we had Tulane defeating North Texas in a track meet, 45-37. Coach Tulane continues to ride the wave and win these ball games. We've talked about trying to maybe get in one of that slot for the playoffs. It might be tough with the amount of teams that they do have lingering out there, but Tulane definitely trying to make their case by taking care of business week in and week out.
Well, I think that game, they play Thursday night this week. That's on TV. That's going to be a big game for them on the road. Again, it will be on the road. But they kind of relaxed in this ball game the other day. They got off the big lead, and Hughes was running crazy. He had 196 yards, and I think they only pulled him because just to kind of rest him. And the other back had almost 100 yards too. So they can score. And the quarterback didn't have a great day, but they did let that other team come back. And I think North Texas they can score on anybody. So I think that they're just relaxed a little bit in this ball game, just a little bit too soon. But yes, they have a very, very good chance if they can run the table. They can be the conversation because I think they could creep into that top 25 if they win this football game, and maybe even as high as 23.
Still have to keep an eye out for Army. Navy took a big loss to Notre Dame, maybe kind of like knocking them a bit down in that perception. But Army's still unbeaten. Boise's a team out there, so a few teams maybe to watch out for when looking at their schedule or who they have left. In our next game, we had Southeastern taking on Incarnate Word. The 11th ranked Incarnate Word Ball Club won this ball game 34-31. Still a good effort from Southeastern with some football left to play. But we've talked about this Incarnate Word team and how they're going to give a lot of teams fits in FCS.
They're well coached. They've been there. They really hurt Nicholls State on the road when Nicholls State went to play there. I think Southeastern is getting better. One of my former players, Justin Dumas, actually, he was a former quarterback, played linebacker now, and they faked a punt, and it ended up going for 32 yards. So I got to give him a call and give him a shout out for that.
Yeah, I remember Dumas played quarterback for you. He was in on that. I talked about this many times. You all of a sudden decide to start pulling out the trick plays when we left against, it was Catholic New Iberia in the semifinals. He had the pass thrown back to him by the running back and scooted off, setting up that the blocked PAT to send you guys to the state title. I remember him, did a fantastic job at quarterback for you. In our next game, we had McNeese State taking on Nicholls. Nicholls winning the in-state matchup 24-19, a nice win for that program. And you mentioned it. They continue to build as the season goes.
Yeah, McQuaid had a good night, and it was good to see him because we had him in Manning camp. He seemed to be a real nice kid. He's not the tallest guy, but he's very accurate. The big play in that game was a screen pass to Guggenheim that actually broke the game open. So that was a huge win for him against McNeese because that's always a big rivalry.
And we're going to go ahead and move on to Saints football as the Saints drop yet another game this week. It's to the Chargers, 26-8. They did get a safety on the day, but again, that seems to be one of the only reassuring things from this matchup.
Yeah, the thing I really liked it. They put Hayner in at the end of the game, and late in the third quarter. If you watch his release, he's got a quick release. I think that kid could be really good, and just give him a chance to start a ball game. That's not the savior. That's not the problem. I mean, there are other things. They got to be able to run the ball just a little bit better. I mean, in the NFL, if you get 100 yards rushing, you've done well because, it's a passing league. That's why the quarterbacks make all the money there. But you have to have protectors, but you have to keep them off stride. And you have to run a system that gives the quarterback an opportunity to complete those passes. Remember, Drew Brees completed, 65% of his passes, but a ton of them were check downs. He threw a bunch of screens and a bunch of check downs, a bunch of short passes, and every now and then it set up the big one. You know what I mean? So you got to remember that when you watch him play, he threw Darren Sproles with one. He threw it into the backfield. I just think they need to get back to more of that stuff.
All right, Coach, and that'll do it for our first segment. When we come back after the break, we're going to have special guest, former Rummel head coach and quarterback, and current athletic director, Jay Roth. So don't touch that dial. You're watching on Varsity Sports Now.
We would like to thank the Accardo Law Firm for being a supporter of the Let's Be Frank video podcast.
Based out of Gramercy, Louisiana, LSR produces Southern Cane pure cane sugar, which is only grown, refined, and packaged in Louisiana. LSR utilizes the latest innovations in technology, as well as ensuring the growth and stability of Louisiana's sugarcane farmers by integrating more than 800 growers in the industry's economic structure. Southern Cane is available in your local Associated Grocers and Rouse's supermarkets.
Since 1972, Riverlands Insurance Services has been dedicated to securing the best insurance products and services available to protect you, your family, your assets, and your business. Our goal has been to establish a strong relationship and partnership between you, the insurance company, and our agency, creating a circle of success that prepares for disasters before they actually happen.
Tonight, our special guest started at Rummel for 3 years at quarterback, became the head coach at the same program for 25 years, including a state title in 2012, 2013, while also promoting a record of 228 wins to 62 losses, while winning 12 Catholic League titles. He's also currently the athletic director at Rummel. Want to bring on special guest Jay Roth. Coach, thank you so much for joining us. And I know you're familiar with Coach Monica, which is why you're on the show, but you're also familiar with his son, Nick Monica. What was the decision to bring him on as the head coach after your long tenure under the program?
Well, first of all, let me tell you what was the reason I brought him on as a coach. I got a phone call from Frank Monica, and I was at Rummel. He's the head coach. He says, Jay, my son just finished college. He's looking for a job. Would you want to interview him? I said, Coach, I'm not interviewing him. He's your son. I'm taking him. And that's how Nick got on. And then he'd done just such a great job coaching the defense, and I saw the kids responded to him. And I didn't want to lose him. I didn't want to lose him to another school because he was about to be head coach ready. So I thought by getting out a few years early, I was going to retain him, which happened. He was the best. He was the best coach out there, and we kept him.
Coach, thank you so much for being on. Thank you so much for all that you've done for high school. But let's also talk about, Coach, you were just inducted to the LHSA Hall of Fame last spring, and congratulations to you. It's a great honor, well deserved. I mean, what you've done in the Catholic League, which I think is, as you know, I think the toughest league in the entire state, and it's been like that for years, and probably they've even thrown more teams in there. But Coach, also tell people your background. You also played at Nicholls State, did you?
Yeah, I went there. I got scholarship as a quarterback and never made it under the center, but I played for 5 years, led it 4 years, and caught 1 or 2 passes and did special teams for 4 years and just had the best 5 years of my life in Thibodeau. And I got to play under Sonny Jackson, a great head coach, but got to play under Joe Clark, and he became one of my good friends, later in life. So as a mentor. So Thibodeau was really good to me.
Coach, you're right. Coach Clark was an excellent offensive mind. He bounced around a lot and just a great individual, mild-mannered guy and something like that. But Coach, you've seen the transition take place in football and things of that nature. Now you look at other sports from the AD perspective, and what do you see as far as the changes in football that weren't there when you first started coaching that are there now in terms of either the rules or offenses or defenses? What you think has been probably the biggest change that impacted football?
Well, first of all, not many kids are playing tackle football anymore. You drive down West Esplanade or West Metairie, and the lights are out at playgrounds, and kids are playing flag football. So when you do get someone interested in playing, you almost got to teach them how to play the game. That's where they used to come to you, knowing how to play the game. Coaches, they used to be staffs. I was on staffs at Shaw and Jesuit where all 5 of the coaches became head coaches. Now you can look at a staff and you might not be able to see anybody's potential head coaching material. So I think head coaches are hard to find. Kids who grew up loving to put on a helmet and pads are hard to find. And of course, I don't think many people remember how it used to be 12 years ago or 15 years ago when it was just 5 classifications, but that's changed too. But the more we get away from it, the less people will ever remember it.
I agree with you totally, Coach. The apple doesn't fall far from the tree, Coach. You played. Your dad, Coach Easton Roth, actually hired me to Jesuit. He was a legend at Rummel himself as a coach, and very meticulous. I remember as a young coach, him drawing plays on the board for me at a very, very young age when he was at Rummel, and they actually started a great tradition there. And now I know he's catching every crab there is in Mississippi. So how is he doing, Coach?
No crabs are running free on the coast. My dad's doing good. But, Coach, it's something that you have in common with your son that I have in common with my father. I know Nick didn't play for you, but he grew up around you on the college campuses and high school campuses. And I know he admired you and saw what you did. So I'm sure that has something to do with him wanting to become a coach. I can remember my father. I graduated in marketing from college, and my father says, "Don't you dare get into high school football." And I didn't listen, but it turned out to be a good choice for me. It's worked out well.
No, it certainly did. You were very, very successful. I know you actually coached at Jesuit at one time, Coach, and I remember you being the offense coordinator at Jesuit before you got the opportunity to go back at Rummel, and you had success also there. Coach, can you remember any particular highlight or a game or something that stands out? You had so many great wins and because a lot of your wins were blowout wins because y'all were so good. And but do you remember? Is there any game that kind of stick out that you recall?
I think the first season we were at Rommel, we were picked 62 out of 64 teams in the state. We really weren't expected to do much. And we opened up the season beating Destrehan 52-14 when they had Rondell Mealy and they had some very good players. And then 3 weeks later, we upset the number one team in the state. We beat St. Aug. And that kind of got us going. I mean, and then week 10, we played for district championship in the first year. And then also one of the most memorable games was the first state championship victory over Barb when they were averaging 40-something points a game. It was like a circus on offense. And we took one of Rick Galey's game plans and slowed the game down and beat them for our first state championship.
And that was at the time, Coach, that was before the select, non-select things, or
Coach, as a matter of fact, we're still the defending 5A state champs, 2012 state champs. Until it gets back, we're going to be the defending 5A state champs. You're right. We won the last, I guess, real state championship.
No question. I remember it well, Coach. I mean, yeah, you guys have been there most of the time, Coach. Coach, how about a couple of players that you've played that maybe went on to play college or maybe even in the pro ranks?
Played or coached?
Played or both, either or.
Well,
either or.
When I was an assistant at Shaw, we had so many great players at University of the Shaw team, which, we had 11 guys signed Division I one year. And then at Jesuit, I coached the offensive backs. I love Paris Childress and Todd Galemi. And at Rummel, Michael Burks, Darren Parquette at running back, Craig Stelz as defensive back, Lamar Mills defensive tackle, Chase Forcade and Damian Williams. So they were some good players. I don't want to leave out. I know I'm leaving out some, but we were blessed to have good players. And I always thought Rummel had good players. So that's why it was an easy choice to go there.
Yeah, and you were coaching, Jamar Chase was just a young kid.
Jamar's in the NFL. Cyril Grayson played 5 years in the NFL. Stephen Carter played 3 years in the NFL. Stephen Dunbar is still in Canada playing. He's about his 6th year in pro ball. Troy Cropie played a couple years in the NFL. Craig Stelz had his career with the Bears. So yeah, we had some talent, and Jamar's one, that everybody knows, just associates Rummel with Jamar.
No question. I mean, I remember a lot of those guys that you're talking about. Coach, as an athletic director, you and I talk a lot on the sideline, watching ball game, watching Nick coaching, and we share a lot of philosophies, a very common philosophy that you and I have. What do you like to see in the LHSAA? What do you like to see besides all of us, I think, are pulling for this thing ever to come back to where it was so we can have that one champion, like the real champion in the LHSAA. In fact, I think Mr. Bourne is going to be on our program in a couple of weeks. And I know he's done a lot of things to try to push that issue whatsoever. And it's getting closer because more teams are considered select. What changes the other things that you'd like to see, though, made with the LHSAA, if any?
Well, they just had a rule passed, I think, a year or two ago where you can practice year-round. There were no more seasons in prep sports. So basketball could practice year-round. Gyms open year-round. Coach can coach them. Football, you can work your kids out year-round. Baseball could be on the field year-round. And I just think that hurts the two-sport athlete, especially hurts the small schools. Also, they had a rule this year where they pushed the baseball season up to start in almost January. Well, basketball is still going on. I think it deters the athlete from playing 2 or more sports. And, you mentioned Jamar Chase earlier. Jamar Chase played football, basketball, and ran track. Christian Fulton ran track, played basketball, and football. So these guys years ago were playing 2 and 3 sports at school, to where now people make a choice not to play after 8th grade. And I just don't think I don't think that's right, especially when you have a school where the numbers are not like 1,200 or 1,500 students. These young men need to play other sports. They can do it. But when you say, all right, you can practice a sport year round, then you're kind of forcing them to make a choice. I like to see that changed.
I agree, Coach, totally. In fact, later on in my program, I'm going to talk about that, about the sports seasons, how one time we had a very, very stringent calendar, and all of a sudden that's been erased, what's going on. There's some things out there, Coach. Do you ever think the transfer portal is going to come into high school?
Well, that's coming up to vote this year. I mean, I don't know if you've seen the amendments for this year, but one of them is a one-time transfer rule in the LHSAA. Can you imagine that?
Yeah.
You and I grew up with rules where if you didn't live in the district, you sat out a year. If you moved into the district, you sat out a year. Now they're going to vote on a one-time transfer portal. in high school sports.
And you know what? It's probably going to pass.
Yes,
because,
it's going to pass.
Yeah, it's probably going to pass.
It's going to pass because they wanted, because like 30% of the other states in the union or 35% of the other states in the union have already passed it. So I think we're going to join the others. I think it's going to pass. You're right.
Exactly. Coach, in some schools, they already have it. we just don't know
about it. Yeah.
Yeah. And stuff like that. But, Coach, there are a lot of things that are going on. I mean, it sounds like we're copycat. We're copycats what's happening in college and in the pros and things of that nature. But Coach, you and I also talk about what's going on as far as the injuries. The injuries that are taking place now because we're so sensitive to concussions, sensitive to helmet contact. I mean, and I'm seeing some things now it's even gotten worse. I mean, just a couple of things, and on NFL level too, NFL, college, and high school. Whenever there's a big hit now, it's flagged. There's a penalty on it, whether it's legitimate or not. Do you notice that also?
Well, first of all, I think the NFL and college, the seasons are too long. 17 games in the NFL regular season. College, if you get to the playoffs, you could play 15 or 16 games. I don't think bodies are meant to last that long, I really don't. And now everybody's so worried about not hitting at practice. Your body's got to condition to being physical. You got to condition your body into being physical. And I think people are getting hurt because during the week, they just lean on each other. They don't get in shape during the off season. There's no physicality during practice during the week. And come game time, it's the first physicality they face all year. So they're getting hurt. They're getting sore.
Yeah,
my opinion.
I agree totally. Coach, now all of a sudden, baseball, for instance, those guys, and one thing, I'm going to talk about that later on. Baseball itself, I mean, as you said, they started in January, they ended in May, and then they go right into that. If they do go to spring training for football, they go right into, it's not American Leagues anymore, but summer baseball. So that's another couple. So, when I was in high school as a high school baseball coach when first started, we only had 20 games. That was it. 20 tournaments counted. You only had 20 games totally, including the tournament. Now they're allowed 32. In basketball, you're right, as you said earlier. Basketball starts in November and it doesn't end until March, well into the baseball season.
Even my head coach says basketball season's too long. 34 games, they scrimmaged today. They opened up scrimmaging today. He says he thinks the season's too long. And he's a head high school basketball coach. So, yeah.
I agree, Coach. Coach, there's so many things out there. Boy, if we can correct it, if you and I could be on that committee just for a little while, we can get this thing corrected, couldn't we?
Well, Coach, you and I are two guys who've spent a lot of time, and we're at the back end. I don't know how much people think we know, but you do know a little bit. That's for sure.
Coach, the recruiting thing, and that's the thing about this NIL stuff that I don't understand. This is turned recruiting upside down. A little kid that wants to go to junior college, he can't even go to junior college. Junior college guys can't even get out of there because of the transfer portal. They go to junior college and no one will take them because the coaches are looking for these guys out of transfer portal first. So, I mean, it's a trickle-down effect. So, therefore, it pushes the kids in high school. They don't have any offers.
No. There's college coaches don't even come into campuses anymore. And then people think the grass is greener on the other side. Somebody told me they had over 2,000 athletes, former scholarship athletes, stuck in the portal with nothing, that gave up a scholarship somewhere and did not get another one. Can you imagine? You have a 4-year scholarship and your parents think you're going to college for free. You get in the portal, you don't get anything. And now.
Well, I know the college coaches hate it. I think that Nick Saban has never said it, but that's had to be one of the reasons it got him out of there because you had to re-recruit your own team.
You had to recruit every day, coach. That's why the head coach of Virginia got out in basketball, And I believe that's why Saban got out, too. You're right.
Yeah. I would love to see somebody like Saban, coach, be ahead of some committee to get all this corrected and bring it to the judges because that's what's happening. These judges are overstepping their boundaries and they're making rulings and they all favor the athlete. And what's happened, that poor coach is caught in the middle and the university is caught in the middle. And it's going to blow up. And sooner or later, there's got to be some type of structure, some type of ceiling, salary cap, or something on the NIL.
Salary cap. That's a big word because they're making a lot of money.
Yeah, exactly. And Coach, I mentioned on the show last week, before a guy transfer, to me, it should be like a junior college. You should at least have to have maybe 2 years, maybe 30 hours that you've passed or 60 hours that you passed before you can transfer. the rule about if I graduate from a school and then I can transfer, I like that rule. But the fact that I can go every year to a different school, I mean, and there's several athletes that have done that.
Every semester, you could go and get $300,000 for August when you start. You could leave in January, go to $200,000 offer. You can make a lot of money moving around in college.
And we heard that one guy at LSU was after Coach, and they didn't get him because and thanks, Brian Kelly did not do that. I applaud him for doing that. There was one guy that was offered $1 million to go to this other school, and he went. Naturally, money talks. But,
Yes.
But Coach, tell us before we close this thing down. Tell us about your family. How's your family doing?
Everybody's doing good. Like I said, my dad's doing fine, living in Diamond Head, enjoying retirement. My brother's in Pascagoula. He's raised 6 kids. He's got 5 of them out the house now. My wife's working too hard. She's wanting to retire. I'm trying to keep her working. And my son's a second-year student athlete, walk on in Nickel State. He's a long snapper playing for Coach Rebo. So I've been attending a lot of Nickel State games now. Everybody's doing good, Coach. Everybody's great.
Coach, thank you so much, and congratulations on the Hall of Fame again, and there's probably more to come, Coach. And you're a heck of a coach, and you're doing a great job of being AD. I know that handling all those other sports is not the easiest thing in the world, too, but especially the spring sports. When you get to spring, I mean, there's a lot of things going on. How many athletes do you guys have, Coach, totally involved in athletics at Rummel?
We have 650 students, and I'd say we have close to 380 involved in sports. And we got, wrestling, swimming, tennis, golf. We got it all. So there's something for everybody. There's something for everybody. Our kids, I am proud. I do enjoy watching the other athletes. I enjoy watching them compete. That's one good thing about being an athletic director.
And Coach, what about lacrosse? Is that going to be a high school sport eventually?
I think so, yes. Yes. Yeah, matter of fact, we have a lacrosse team at the club level. We have 30 kids playing lacrosse at the club level. Yes, we do.
I don't know anything about it. I can't even spell it, so I don't even know anything about it.
Well, I don't know nothing about it either. So look, Coach, we might stand together tomorrow night on Friday night on the sidelines. All right. I
hope so, Coach. That's a big game I know it's a big game for both teams. I know.
Yes.
Jesuit's probably the hottest team in the state right now, and
yep.
and I know both teams are probably looking forward to maybe the winner that probably can get a bye for the playoffs, hopefully. And so it should be fun because I think Coach Manali has a Rummel background. Actually, Coach Monica being there, so it's gonna be have some real fun time right there. And I'll see you on the sideline. So I hope we can kind of share a couple more lies.
You got it, Coach. Thanks for having me, guys.
Thank you so much.
All right, take care. Bye.
We would like to thank Gulf Coastal Sponsors for being a sponsor of the Let's Be Frank video podcast.
Based out of Gramercy, Louisiana, LSR produces Southern cane, pure cane sugar, which is only grown, refined, and packaged in Louisiana. LSR utilizes the latest innovations in technology, as well as ensuring the growth and stability of Louisiana sugarcane farmers by integrating more than 800 growers in the industry's economic structure. Southern cane is available in your local Associated Grocers and Rouse's supermarkets.
Since 1972, Riverlands Insurance Services has been dedicated to securing the best insurance products and services available to protect you, your family, your assets, and your business. Our goal has been to establish a strong relationship and partnership between you, the insurance company, and our agency, creating a circle of success that prepares for disasters before they actually happen.
We would like to thank Riverlands Insurance for sponsoring the Let's Be Frank video podcast.